All right, so one of the phenomena here on Twitter that is very, very intriguing to me and is worth examining in some detail, it's worth thinking about, is worth discussing, is the evangelical atheist or the ideological atheist. Now, why do they exist at all? They're out there. And as far as I can parse it out, they're a really pretty big part of the atheist community. Now, I'm going to say they're 30 to 35%, and that's being really generous. That's really big of you, Craig. Yeah, I know it is. This is really generous, Craig. Yeah, I know it is. That's a lowball estimate. 30 to 35% of the atheists that you interact with are ideological atheists, evangelical atheists. I'm using the term somewhat interchangeably. Now, by way of comparison, there is an atheist along the lines of Brett. Now, I've brought this up before, but it's worth repeating. Brett says the same things that other atheists say. He kind of is on the exact same page with them in terms of what he says, in terms of what he says he believes. So he will say, I just don't believe you, Craig. I don't believe in a God. And I say, why not, Brett? And he said, because you've given me no good evidence for it. I've read the stuff, I've read arguments for God, I've looked at some books, and I see no really good evidence that would convince me that there is a God. You know, show me the evidence and maybe I'll sign up. Now, what's interesting about that is that's how a lot of atheists posit their beliefs. You know, I just don't believe you, Craig. What's interesting in Professor of Doubt's case is that is perfectly consistent with his actions. Perfectly consistent with his actions. I just don't believe you, Craig. So much so that he's willing to go, you know, okay, I'll give you a fair hearing, you know, you give me your little rituals and your little fairy dust potions, and I'll try them out for myself. And if they work, you know, if your little sky fairy magic potions work, then I'll sign up. Call me skeptical, Craig. Why? Because I don't believe you. You know, I'll give this crackpot a fair hearing. Sure, Craig, whatever you say. Jesus is real, Craig, whatever you say. Give me, you know, point me to the books that you think is going to prove it to me. But the point I'm trying to make is his actions are consistent with what he says he believes. This is not true of the evangelical atheist. I just don't believe you, Craig. Will say the exact same thing, but their actions are not consistent with what they say they believe. There is a tell involved in there. And by a tell, I mean a behavior that indicates something, a behavior that is actually a sign of something other than what the person is purporting to believe. That's a tell. It's something that the person isn't intending to, it's a signal about something the person isn't intending to signal you to. A tell. And in the case of the evangelical atheists, the people who assert their non-belief apropos of nothing, that is not a sign, guys, if you're one of them, if you're one of these little atheist bully congregants who congregate around Stephanie's timeline every time she tweets a tweet, you got to go on record. Oh, I think this is ridiculous. This is so dumb. That may be convincing to you that that's a sign that you are really confident in your position, but it actually says the opposite. It does not bespeak confidence in your position. It bespeaks the opposite. Wobbly. Why do you got to go on record, make sure I know how ridiculous you think my beliefs are? Why do you got to even tell me that? Because you ain't that confident. That's why. That's why. That's the only thing about that behavior that makes sense. Now, Brett's behavior is consistent with what he says he believes. And there's 20 to 30% of the atheists are more along the lines of Brett. Let's have a conversation about this, you know, show me whatever crackpot ideas you think are right, Craig. Let's get some evidence for him. He's skeptical. That's perfectly consistent with his beliefs. Why is there such a thing as an evangelical atheist at all? Why? That's a question that's worth asking and worth thinking about in some depth. Why? Because it doesn't completely make organic sense to what the atheists are purporting to be about. So they get asked, and this is what they'll say often on Twitter when pressed. Well, we wouldn't care. Why do you care at all that there are people, in other words, why do you care at all that there are people out here that believe Christians, that believe in God? What difference does it make to you? Why do you spend your time even arguing with them? Why do that? Why participate in that? See, I understand the deconversion process up to a point, and to some degree empathize. When I interview someone like Drew, I can't promise you that I wouldn't have deconverted to some degree from what he grew up in. I certainly would have rebelled. Whether I would have gone full atheist, I doubt it. But would I have stayed consistently a member of the Christian tribe that he was a part of? No, probably not. So some of the deconversion process I get to a certain degree and I empathize with to a certain degree. But then you get to another place and you have these evangelical atheists, these ideological atheists. And their behavior is not consistent with what they say they are about. That's the point. So let's examine the behavior itself. When pressed, usually they will say something along the line, if you guys weren't such right-wing crackpots, if you guys weren't so anti-science, and you weren't all this tribe called fundamentalism trying to change our science books and make sure, make sure you change our laws, then we wouldn't care. That's what they usually say. Again, not consistent with their behavior. That's the lip service they will usually give as to why they're evangelical, why they have a dog in the fight, why that dog is so intense, why they're an atheist activist. That's the lip service that you will usually hear, but it's not usually consistent with their actual behavior. There is such a thing in life as a liberal Christian, or as I prefer to call it, a wussy Christian. Yeah, wussies. They're wussies. Let's be perfectly honest. I believe that Jesus is love. I don't believe in hell. God would never do that. God is love. It's okay if you want to vote for the Democrats. Yeah, they're wussies. Liberal Christians. I get it. They're wussies. I don't agree with them either. I far prefer my own version of man's man Christianity. Real man Christianity. The hardcore Texas evangelist style. Fire and brimstone. You're going to wear a miniskirt in my town. You're going to burn in hell. You're going to burn in hell if I catch you wearing a miniskirt in my town. You will drink. You will burn in hell forever. Where you will drink not but burning hot Coca-Cola and eat not but burning hot coals from now until the end of time. Praise you, Jesus. Praise you, Jesus, for destroying the sinner. In my sight it is holy and it is good. That's the type of man's man Christianity that I espouse. Yeah, real man Christianity. That's hardcore, Craig. Word. Word. That's how I roll, dude. That's really hardcore, Craig. Well, whatever. Straighten up and fly right, or be punished forever. Bang, just like that. Lay it down just like that. Now that's the type of Christianity that I'm all about. Hardcore man's man, real man Christianity. I don't necessarily agree with the liberal wussy Christians. Okay? It's too soft. It's too weak. Oh, I believe you can vote for a Democrat. God is love. It's wussy. But my question is, when the evangelical atheist is faced with the wussy Christian, the liberal Christian, their behavior isn't any different. Why? Why? It's really strange phenomena. Go watch Pine Creek Doug. He's probably my go-to person when I talk about the evangelical atheist. Why? Because he's really evangelical. You're on one end of the spectrum, you have Brett, who, honest to God, probably doesn't care at all about what you believe. He's not trying to convince me ever he's not trying to push his beliefs on me at any point ever. Or if he is, he's doing it so subtly and skillfully that I can't perceive it. And on the other hand, you have, a Pine Creek Doug, who's almost purely evangelical. But he doesn't differentiate. He says he differentiates between the fundamentalist, the Ken Ham, and the Laura Robinson, but in actual practice he doesn't. Go watch his interview with Randall Rouser. That's kind of, as far as I know, I could be wrong about Randall Rouser, I just read his tweets. But he's certainly not a conservative. He hates Trump. Oh my God, he hates Trump with like every fiber of his being. All he tweets about is half his tweets are how much he can't stand Trump. It's his prerogative. I don't care who you vote for. I honestly don't. I myself I'm a centrist. I'm the swing voter. I can vote for either squad. Usually depends on the person. Yeah, sometimes I vote for the Democrat. You vote for the Democrat? You vote for the Democrat? That's why my wife does that a lot. Tells me I can't. She forgets that I often vote for the Democrat. She'll say to me, just in plain English, you can't really be a Christian and vote for the Democrats. And I'm like, well, hello, I'm a Christian right here. I think I'm more committed than you are, and I vote for the Democrats. Never really goes further than that. She'll just say that and kind of forget who she's talking to. I think it's amusing. It's just one of those talking points that comes out of her mouth. No, the debate never gets past that point. Because that would be contentious. We never go into actual, and we never, that's part of why how you get along with people who don't agree with you is really simple. You don't force your beliefs on them. She's free to believe whatever she wants. And truth be told, she's been really influential on me because over the years, I've become more empathetic towards conservatives just by virtue of being married to her. It's impossible not to be. Why? Because I kind of get it. When she says, some of the stuff that she says, I kind of understand where she's coming from. So it's hard for me not to kind of, gradually become more conservative over the years. That's what happens. That's why people are ideological first, dogmatic first. Why? Because they don't want to change. They don't want to be influenced by the other person. If you give them a fair hearing, there's 99 times out of 100, guess what's going to happen? Organically. You give somebody a fair hearing, you're going to start to empathize a little. You're going to start to understand where they're coming from. That doesn't mean you're going to necessarily agree with them, but they are going to start to influence the way you perceive reality. The reason why someone like Brett welcomes the process is because he wants to be a fully realized human being. He wants to really think things through. He wants to be wise and comprehensive in his approach to other human beings. He doesn't want to just shut people down. He wants to understand them. That's why he rolls the way he rolls. That's why he operates. That's why, one of his most important agendas to him is communication. Because he recognized the value of really, really examining the beliefs of someone you disagree with in a way that's friendly and non-confrontational. But he also recognizes the potential downside is that you are going to be influenced by them. I have become more conservative over the years, just by virtue of the fact that I'm married to one. We don't argue about politics at all. We almost never agree. But there's a lot of things that we do agree on, interestingly enough. And, final analysis, to be perfectly fair, I hate them both. I hate both parties. I don't really favor the Democrats all that much more than the Republicans. I hate them both. When push comes to shove, like most normal people, I can't stand either of them. Sometimes I think they're both a pox on both their houses. They both will drive me crazy. Sometimes I hate the Democrats more. Sometimes I hate the Republicans more. It just depends on who's talking, which Democrat's talking, and which Republican's talking. Oh, I hate that guy. I swear to God, that's usually how it goes down. I can't stand either of them, to tell you the truth, and I'm like most normal Americans. We can't stand either. Why? Because they're both full of it. They both have their special interest agendas. They're both kind of and I won't even go in. Don't even get me started on politics. Who got me started on politics? So my point is, Doug's behavior is no different when he is faced with a quote-unquote liberal Christian. It's no different at all. He ran the same playbook on Randall Rouser that he ran on Laura Robinson. Randall Rouser was particularly egregious. Why? Because he used his liberal take on the Bible against him in a way that seemed totally disingenuous to his actual stated purpose. I just wish these Christians weren't so, literalist, weren't so stridently dogmatic about these certain scriptures. Then when he finds one who isn't, he starts trying to use that against him. Starts asking about weird stuff, do you think the zombies walk the earth? I don't remember how it exactly went down. I'll do an analysis on it one day. Wouldn't surprise me. Okay, I don't know for a fact he said this, but it wouldn't surprise me if he said exactly this. So you don't think that zombies walk the earth, or you do think zombies walk the earth? Try to make him look bad by being a liberal Christian with a more expansive, more metaphorical interpretation of the Bible. Didn't gain him any credibility. That's my point. The liberal Christian didn't gain anything in the sight of the evangelical atheists. Oftentimes they don't. Again, why? Really strange phenomenon that happens almost every day on Twitter, and why it happens, I don't know. You got 100 times a day. Almost every single atheist has an atheist playbook that they will say, I just don't believe you. If you show me evidence, I could be convinced by real evidence. Sometimes they mean it, a la Brett. I've actually got an open mind. I'm actually a free thinker. That's important to my value system. My behavior is consistent with my beliefs. That's why I say he's got integrity. Why? Because he does. His behavior is consistent with what he believes. And sometimes the behavior is consistent with the beliefs in other ways. So, for example, you have a Mr. Atheist. Now, I don't know him that well. I don't watch that many of his videos. But a big part of his jam seems to be being Mr. Gay Rights. Seems to be a big part of why he walked away from whatever it was, Mormonism. And a big part of, he may be gay, I think he may be out, I'm not sure. I don't really listen to his videos all that much. Don't know him all that well. I just know a couple of key things. So he made an ally in the Christian community with, for example, God is Gray. Again, I don't watch that many of her videos, a few here and there. But I gather from the little I've watched that she's Mrs. Gay Rights. Okay, so a big part of his agenda is gay rights. She's Mrs. Gay Rights. It makes sense to me that he starts aligning with her. And he considers an ally to a certain degree. Why? Because in that particular area, they both tend to be on the same page. All I'm trying to point out, in that area, his behavior is consistent with his beliefs. With his vocalized beliefs, with what he says he believes. There are a lot of atheists who tell you, point blank, if you guys weren't such right-wing crackpots, if you weren't all fundamentalists, then I'd be cool with you. And they're not telling the truth. Why? Because you find a couple here and there who are liberals, and they don't act any different. Gains them no credibility with that same person. That's mysterious. That's mysterious. And then, out of the mouth of Doug. The reason why I'm going back to Doug is because I watch a lot of his videos. I'm not trying to pick on Doug. I'm not. You know, I apologize, Doug, if I'm using you too much. Right? You're the most evangelical one out there. I'm kind of just using you as the example because I watch a lot of your videos. But he did say to the liberal Christian, Laura Robinson, you should search far and wide for a defeater. He said that. Promise. And that struck me as a really strange approach to religious ideas at all. Why on earth would you do that? Why on earth would you think that's the right approach? These are by definition nebulous subjective experiences. By definition nebulous subjective experiences. You search far and wide for a defeater, guess what? You're going to find one. It's not going to correspond to reality or truth value at all. Why? Because these are by definition nebulous subjective experiences. If you go searching far and wide for a defeater, guarantee you will find one. That's what happens with the subjective experience. You bend over backwards. This is what I'm trying to say. That the behavior that he acts is consistent with 30 to 35% of the atheists. They bend over backwards to try to prove you wrong. Bend over backwards to debunk, dismiss, discredit you. Why? Why? It's a very strange thing. It's a very strange part of it. It was something that totally threw me when I first experienced it. Why on earth is this person wrestling with me this much? If they really didn't think that I had anything to tell them, their behavior would be totally different. They really didn't think, if they just really didn't believe me, you know, Pleasure of Doubt's behavior is totally consistent with what he says he believes. I don't really believe you, Craig, so, you know, whatever little weak-ass rituals you want to show me, whatever little fairy dust you want to give to me, yeah, I'll try it out. And he's kind of sniggering to himself, you know. We'll see. We'll see how it goes, Mr. Crackpot Craig. He might think I'm a crackpot. Doesn't matter. His behavior is consistent with what he says he believes. With other evangelical, ideological atheists, it's not. That's my point. I start talking to them, and they go on record immediately. I think you're crazy. I think you're wrong. I think you're crazy. Debunk. Let me debunk, dismiss, discredit you really quickly. Let me throw you off your game so you can't make clear points. Strident. Really, really agenda-driven. Really, really insistent on making me believe something. That's not consistent with having strong beliefs yourself. Reality check 101. The fundamentalist, foaming at the mouth fundamentalist atheist has more akin, a lot of people point this out. It's about time you all acknowledge this as truth, because it's true. The foaming at the mouth fundamentalist atheist is more akin to the foaming at the mouth fundamentalist Christian than we of the Middle Territory. Hello? Reality check 101. That's the God's honest truth, guys. That's the God's honest truth. The foaming at the mouth fundamentalist atheist has more in common with the foaming at the mouth fundamentalist Christian than we of the Middle Territory. We of the Middle Territory tend to be reasonable round the boards. You talk to me on any subject, I tend to be reasonable round the boards. It's not hard for you to find agreement with me. Why? Because I'm reasonable about almost everything. Again, with conservatives, the reason why I get along with conservatives is because I agree with some of the stuff they say makes sense to me. I think they're right on a couple key points. Lowering the tax rate does seem to juice the economy. Stands to reason. Why? Because you're putting money in the, you're giving money back to the businesses and they're investing it. Hello? It's going to grow the economy. Hello? Yeah, rocket science, Greg. It seems to be a truism. You tax your businesses at 20%, you make them more competitive. And they're going to use that money, hopefully prudently, to, invest in factories and, enslave the working man. Enslave the, you understand what I mean? And on the Democratic side, same thing. The reason why I never go full Republican is because there's a bunch of people in the Republican Party who go too far. Some of the social programs that the Democrats are all giddy about, some of those programs may be actually necessary. I'm not in the business of wanting to take medicine away from poor people and food off of the, some of those programs may be overkill. And there's inefficiencies there to be sure, but that doesn't mean I necessarily want to do away with social programs or the idea that they're actually helping people, because I think in a lot of cases they may be. Don't know. I'd be willing to look at the evidence. All I'm saying is that I'm available to both points of view. I can be swayed either way. The ideological atheist is not available to the evidence. They cannot be swayed. They are immovable. They have more in common with the fundamentalist Christian. That's my point. Why? Their behavior does not match their stated beliefs. With the Christian, it's more consistent with what their stated beliefs are. Because they recognize to some degree that their beliefs are outside of the mainstream of science and education. So if they're talking about the earth is 6,000 years old, makes sense that they circle the wagon, shut down the information gathering process. Why? Because the information is going to contradict what they tell you is their sacred belief. The behavior makes a little bit more sense. Why on earth is the atheist trying to shut down the information process? Why on earth would they be acting like that? They say that they're Mr. and Mrs. Science. They say that they're Mr. and Mrs. Evidence-based conclusions. Try and get any single one of them to examine the evidence about, the secular utility of religion. Aaron Ra, for example, will tell you out of his own mouth that he's been studying religion for 20 years. 20 years, and never once clicked on, page 1 of a Google search, secular utility of religion. You find 15 studies on the first page. So that's agenda-driven information gathering. That's tribalism. All tribes do it to a certain degree. I get that. All tribes are in an echo chamber to a certain degree. The point is, with the atheists, it's inconsistent with what they say they're actually all about. It's not necessarily inconsistent with the Christians. It's really not. If you push the Christian, they'll tell you it's faith and it's, they'll tell you I don't trust science. Why? Because that's the world. It's the devil. It's not necessarily all that inconsistent when you talk about the fundamentalist Christian. It's dogmatic, sure. It's ideological, sure. And sometimes it's truth denying. But it's not necessarily inconsistent with what that person says is their stated, real, hardcore beliefs. In the course of, in the example of the atheist, is totally inconsistent with what they say their stated beliefs are. Totally and completely and utterly inconsistent. Doesn't match at all. That's why it's strange. That's why it's weird. That's why it is a phenomenon that is worth investigating, worth talking about. Yeah, I'm rambling a little, ranting and raving. You sound like you're ranting and raving, Craig. Sound like you're rambling. Okay, fine, whatever. Whatever. Don't listen to me. I don't care. Do your own thing. Go check it out sometimes. You tell me. There are a lot of liberal Christians out there in the community. Actually, Stephanie's kind of a liberal Christian. Yeah, dirty little secret. Oh, yeah, she is a little bit. I don't know, she's kind of picks and chooses. She's a little bit not about some things, like I guess inerrancy, and then other things she's totally liberal to the point where she's actually will even vote sometimes for a Democrat. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? I swear to God, my wife says that to me a lot. You can't be a Christian and vote for the Democrat. And she forgets that hello, I'm more a Christian than you are, babe. That's what I say. No, we never go Christian to Christian. I kill her. She barely prays at all. That's what I get on a case about. No, she's, she's sweet. She's sweet. She's just more of a traditional, what people expect, type Christian. Rather than this. Anywho, so there it is. Just a little food for thought. Nothing all that groundbreakingly important. Just something to think about. I'm gonna make more videos on the subject. Why? Because it strikes me as extremely relevant. There's an inconsistency there that is worth exploring, and it doesn't exist in all cases, but it's certainly there. Certainly there. The one time someone was talking about an evidence, and I posted my video link to him. Guy had practically had a panic attack and meltdowns trying to even get through my video, trying to listen to the whole video. And he came up with these critiques that were like mind-boggling in their let me not engage with you at all. Every 30 seconds he had an objection to something I said. It was like, what planet is this from? It was so bizarre. It was so bizarre, and it was so inconsistent with how the guy presents himself. I'm just about evidence fact-finding. Didn't even come close to giving it a fair hearing. Didn't even begin. It was like bent over backwards. That's the part that's really strange, and it happens a lot. The atheists will bend over backwards to discredit you. Bend over backwards. Not organically discredit you because you're saying something a little dumb or stupid. Bend over backwards to discredit you when you aren't saying anything that they shouldn't know is true. Most of my videos, I've studiously avoided all types of spiritual faith language for a reason. So, if you're finding that you object to something I say, look a little deeper. Why? It's probably not something I say is at issue or wrong. It's just you don't want to hear it. Because I studiously avoid all types of faith language and all things like that. So if I say, this is something that an atheist and Christian can readily agree upon, usually that's something we can readily agree upon. If you don't know that there's a physiological response to prayer, that it affects your brain chemistry, then you don't know the facts, period. So, anyways, little side point, but... So, there you have it, kids. Just rambling a little, what do you want from me? Wednesday morning, 3 a.m. And, there you have it. Mass is over. Go in peace. Amen.